welcome to coverage of Pro Tour Gatecrash here from Montreal. My name is Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Brian David Marshall, and we are seeing some limited action here. It's round 3 of our second draft of the Pro Tour. We have Ben Stark. He's known as a limited master. He's a fantastic limited player, and he is going to be playing against a man we call DVR.
Don van Ravenswaaij from the Netherlands, or from Australia via the Netherlands.
All right,
and
so
they are already underway. We see a Syndic of Tithes in play. There you go. Syndic of Tithes in play for Ben Stark, and a Skin Brand Goblin in play for Don.
Right. So we get a look at Court Street Denizen here, as looks like Ben is deep in thought.
It's not a card that's actually, unless he just drew that. No, I don't think so. I don't believe that card is. There we go. The correct card we wanted to show was.
Oh, because it was a Syndic of Tithes. Yep, you're right.
But and he just played White of Precinct 6 and Extorted for 1.
All right, looks like DVR's taking a look and making sure he knows exactly what's going on with the board state here, as he has 2 mountains on his side.
Look at his hand.
And a Skin Brand Goblin. His hand looks sweet. Sunhome Guildmage, excellent card. Scorchwalker, great way to get in damage. The Millennial Gargoyle we've seen quite a bit of today, which is
the End Times Gargoyle.
kind of a sad card. And he is going to trade off and then follow up with an Armored Transport. Pass the turn back to Ben, who is going to play a Court Street Denizen. That's one we were looking at just a minute ago. Any white creature that enters the battlefield under his control is going to allow him to tap down a creature.
And so remember, Ben Stark was drafting 2 seats downstream from Melissa DeTora.
That's right.
And also is in Orzhov.
He just described in a draft tech that he did with Zach Hill that he thinks that there's 2 plays here. Sunhome Guildmage, thanks to that plane.
That looks like Firefist Striker.
Yeah, Firefist Striker, which is really a solid card for the Boros deck. It allows you to falter, which means the creature can't block for the turn if you attack. But he's going to trade it off immediately for Syndic of Tides. He doesn't want to let that thing get out of hand, and he's going to take DVR is going to take 2 from the Court Street Denizen. After that, Ben Stark followed up with a Syndicate Enforcer. Turn is back on DVR.
And Ben is, down to like a Plains in hand. He's out of steam, where we still have a fistful of cards going on over here.
I know that there were some mulligans here. I'm assuming they were on Ben Stark's
side.
I
believe
here.
Both players mulliganed.
Okay. I think that was a mugging.
Mugging on the Syndicate Enforcer.
That's right. After an attack from the Armored Transport, the Millennial Gargoyle, the Harbinger of Doom, has come down. It's 5 mana, though, for the card that we actually saw Ben talk about on that deck tech quite a bit, Guardian of the Gateless. It's a 3/3 with flying that can block any number of creatures, and it gets +1/+1 for each additional, for each creature it blocks.
Right, not a card he was super excited about playing.
That's right, but it's actually a very solid card. I mean,
certainly very interesting in something like Sunhome Gargoyle here, where Sunhome Guildmage, where he can
block all the tokens.
You make all the tokens. He can block all the tokens for kind of free.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think Guardian of the Gateless is quite strong. Yep. Now, Ben prefers his Orzhov deck to have a ton of cheap creatures, cheap spells.
Right. He wants his mana curve to be an icicle hanging down at 1, 2s, and 3s. Right.
That's a great visual. All right. So DVR's contemplating his turn here. Now, he's got the opportunity to just start making tokens over and over and look for a window to get in with them, or he can keep developing his board. He's also got a 5-drop in hand with Fortress Cyclops, which is a 3/3, but when it blocks, it gets +0/+3. When it attacks, it gets +3/+0.
Attack. Yep.
He says attack, and he's going to attack with his 2 artifact creatures, the Armored Transport and the Millennial Gargoyle.
This is going to be Scorchwalker for the
Yeah, either way, no matter how Ben blocks, it looks like he's just going to block the gargoyle, though he clearly sees that there's a trick in the midst here, and he doesn't want to lose it. So this will be a 2-for-1 for Ben if DVR does decide to pull the trigger, which he's really committed to do here. He can't just let his gargoyle die.
If he had an extra planes, he could activate his Sun. You know, a planes here, he could activate his Sun Guild Mage twice, but he has to use the Scorch Walker. That's
a pretty great outcome for Ben, really. Getting a 2-for-1 from his creature is pretty nice. All right, so Court Street Denizen is going to attack. And 1,000 Lashes is going to come down, and it's going to basically neutralize that Guild Mage in every way. It cannot attack or block. It also cannot use its activated abilities, of which it has 2 very potent ones, and it's going to start pinging away at his life total as Ben remembers during his upkeep to announce that trigger. It says, you take 1. All right, 2 damage from Armor and Transport, and the follow-up play is the Fortress Cyclops. So that's going to add a lot of pressure to the board, as Ben doesn't really have a great board. He's just got a single 2/2 on the board, and he's got to shift the turn back. So even though he's had some favorable plays for him, DVR is actually in a very commanding board state here, thanks to that huge Fortress Cyclops that can get in for 6 damage, and the Armor Transport, which really just can't be blocked. This would be this would be over half of Ben's life total. It's 8.
Yep.
Dropping him down to 7 life, and DVR still in a relatively comfortable life total with 9, facing only a single 2/2. Ben has no play on end step, no removal spell, no executioner swing, nothing. Draws his card for the turn. Looks like it's another Court Street Denizen.
Let's take a look.
It is indeed. He's making sure that he's dead here. What he wants to do, you can see him kind of delegating to himself. Now, he can double block the Cyclops with 2 creatures. It will be a 6/3.
Right, it gets a bonus when it blocks. It becomes a 3/6.
That's right.
When it attacks, it's a 6/3.
Yeah, so he can 2-for-1 2 of his creatures to take it out. He would take 2 damage and go to 5.
But we also know that there's still some trickery in Van Ravenswaaj's hand.
That's right. Now, Ben, it did decide to take the defensive route. What he was doing is trying to decide if he could actually attack here. You do a chump block, and then if there was anything in his deck that can get him the victory the next turn with his opponent down at 6, but there wasn't.
This is your block?
Yeah.
Double block?
Okay, so he says, this is your block? You double block? And Ben says, yeah, absolutely.
Plus opens for you.
So we're going to see Martial Glory come down to not only save the Cyclops, but add an additional 3 damage. That was a rather glorious version of that. It's going to put Ben all the way down to 2 with no creatures on board, 3 cards in hand. But it's a Vizcapa Guild Mage here, which will actually keep him alive an extra turn, as he can give it lifelink.
Yep.
And block the Cyclops, leaving him at 1. But things not looking good for Ben Stark in game 1 here versus
attack
DVR.
Okay.
There's another Guardian of the
4/2
Gateless in his deck.
Ben has 2?
Looks like he has 2.
Oh, that's impressive.
Yeah. So that would be a card.
That was way too close for comfort.
He doesn't draw it. He shows DVR a couple of lands, and Ben Stark loses the first game. DVR taking it
Interesting
down.
whether or not I should attack there.
Yeah.
You know which point I'm talking about, right?
Dak Faden is the greatest thief in the multiverse. Follow his adventures in the Magic the Gathering comic produced by IDW. A special promo card unique to the IDW comic series comes in each issue. Find out more about these comics at wizards.com/magicmerchandise.
Oh,
No,
you're taxing.
the one where I 2-for-1 myself and I attack into your
Well,
flyer.
you were going to have to work through that guy. I mean,
Yeah, felt like I needed to get rid of it. But it's... 6th land would have been amazing there.
You can hear the players talking about DVR justifying his self 2-for-1 there. Ben said, well, you needed to get rid of it sometime.
So, by the way, worth noting that while Ravenswaaij is playing in his first Pro Tour, he is coming off of a 9th place finish at Grand Prix Sydney.
Ah, so he is not foreign to the high-level play of recent. So, yeah. That helps get you mentally prepared, playing against those very late game GP competitors.
Yeah, Rich and I were talking about that, how you can sort of like propel yourself off of like a strong GP finish.
You see that all the time.
All the time into a good performance at the Pro Tour. Like, oh, yeah, you know who? I beat in that last round. I beat Shouta Yasoka in that last round. I finished 9th, but that's great. That's
What percentage of that do you think is confidence-based? Like, do you think a lot of it's like, now I know I can do this, so you go do it?
I'm always leery, right? It's kind of like talking about momentum in sports.
Yeah, it's a kind of a fallacy. It's something that happened in the past, but you can't really predict.
But I do think that a positive mindset in yourself, like you see it all the time at Magic, right? Like, believing that you belong there, believing that you can win, goes a long way to relaxing your mind and letting the game come to you, as opposed to being really clenched up and really nervous. What we were talking about earlier, about going to the Pro Tour and being nervous.
Yeah.
And when you're nervous and you're scared, you start making the opposite decision of what you were thinking about. You start to doubt yourself. You start to doubt your intuition.
Right.
And having a successful event can really help feed your confidence in your inner voice, which tells you, I don't want to attack there. I think he's got the trick.
I'm going to go with this.
I'm going to go with this. I'm going to wait a turn. I know that I can win this way.
One of the... Yeah, it looks like players are chatting, and as Ben might be taking another mulligan here, or is he just being a very thorough shuffler?
When you're 12-1, you can start offering IDs.
Yeah, 12-3-1 is going to make it. This isn't even a particularly big Pro Tour. Like 12-3-1. No, we're just shuffling. 12-3-1, I think, will be a stone lock.
Yeah.
And like I said, I would be surprised if no X4s made it, but certainly more X4s will miss than make it. There'll just be one or two, maybe.
Listening on the players chatting about their predictions on what kind of a record you need to make the top 8.
Right, and that's definitely something where Ravenswaaij has not done that before.
When a situation arises, because
Of course.
Now,
People you don't have to ask your opponent in that spot when you get a different interest.
That's what I was just going to bring up. Is normally you wouldn't want to ask your opponent. Yeah, you're fine. I think Ben's trustworthy here.
PTQs right now, but these big things are a bit different.
You probably won't be playing a PTQ for a long time after this Pro Tour.
That all depends.
Even if you don't top 8, top 25 keys for next. So.
Yeah, but silver level is... That's true. So for next is true. But I mean, silver level's
It's like practically
irrelevant. I don't understand why they did that. What's wrong with the old system of picking one Pro Tour?
I don't know. I mean, I guess the Pro Tour was getting a little too large. Like, this Pro Tour only has like 3 players or something.
So they're talking about how if you get a top 25 at the Pro Tour, you automatically get an invite to the next one. So, at least for the short term, DVR is looking to be in a good position as he's making a very deep run in this one, and if he does manage to top 25, he won't have to PTQ to get back on again.
And as a player,
you can start chaining those together.
Yeah, and as a player, you want to get to gold.
Yeah.
Right? You want to get to gold. That's the first level where you're qualified for a series of events.
It used to be called the train.
The gravy train,
the slang term for being qualified for the events for a year, and that's certainly the goal of a lot of the players out here.
So it looks like we're underway. It looks like Ben's keeping his starting 7. And that sure looks like a pair of Sunhome Guild Mages to me in VR's hand. Well, he's got 3 in his deck. So,
3?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that may very well be a pair.
That's interesting. That gives the Boros deck a lot of flexibility in going late game because he can. It looks like Ben's kept and DVR's decided he's going to mulligan. That's interesting. Having 3 of those, because oftentimes the first one you play, it's going to die. that thing is a lightning rod.
Feels like this deck can do better.
If you can keep one on the table, though, it means that you can actually take a fairly long game approach because you can just start dumping all of your mana into making 1/1.
So this is a question for you at home. You're playing your X and 1 at the Pro Tour. You're up a game. Your hand on the draw with Boros is Sunhome Guild Mage, Sunhome Guild Mage, Scorchwalker, Plains, 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 Plains.
Plains? All plains?
All plains. What do you do? Tweet it me and Marshall.
Yeah, let us know what you guys
Marshall_LR at Top 8 Games. Curious what you think. Use the Pro Tour Gatecrash hashtag. I'm curious.
Yeah, PTGTC.
How you guys all think that's a slam dunk mulligan? Or is that something where you're like, well, I know I have,
Yes.
looking at this, 10 mountains in my deck.
He's got 10 red
Mountains
sources.
in my deck. Do you?
So that's the question that we're really asking, right? It's
Yeah.
like, let's say you do draw a mountain on the next turn. Are you happy?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, double Sunhome Guildmage is pretty good, but it's not going to win the game by itself too many times. This is going to be interesting. I'm curious what you guys have to say about that. 10 red sources.
So we see hand 6 cards.
All right, so Ben Stark leads off with a swamp. It's a plains, one of the ones that we know that he has from DVR. He has a second one.
Go.
3 lands for Ben Stark with no play, and 3 plains into an armored transport for DVR. The action is quick early here, and Ben has no white mana sources. His hand is full of white cards too.
So let's show you what he's holding on to here.
Just an attack, no play, and boom,
me
a
too.
plains for Ben Stark. It's going to open up his entire hand, and he's going to start off with a Firemane Avenger.
Oh, that's all.
Now, by itself, it's still quite good as a 3/3 flyer, but it does not get to activate Battalion, at least for a little while. But right now, DVR, all he has is that pesky armored transport and 4 planes. He's got a Millennial Gargoyle, so at this very moment, he's got 2 artifact creatures and a pretty stacked hand for later in the game. Let's see what Ben can come up with on his side. See, he's got 5 white cards. He only can play 1 per turn thanks to that solitary plains. He's not even going to play one this turn. He's just going to go with using up the most mana he can and play a Syndicate Enforcer. Syndicate Enforcer is going to enable him to race the best, as he's not going to be able to block that armored transport either way. This is going to incentivize DVR to not attack, as he can trade off his armored transport for the Syndicate Enforcer. It looks like DVR has not yet found a red source, and he's forced to just ship the turn back. All right, a second white mana, a second plains for Ben Stark is going to let him cast 2 creatures this turn if he wants. He can play like a Kingpin's Pet, and then like if he wants he can do a Syndic of Tides and even pay the extort on one of these, and he just did that, and there we go. 1 extort trigger, but 2 creatures on the board, and Ben says go. He's setting up for a Lightning Helix from his Firemane Avenger next turn. He doesn't want to trade off his Syndicate Enforcer for the armored transport. DVR still mountainless.
Back table game update. Samuel Estrade, the Pro Tour Philadelphia champion, up 1 game on Tom Martell.
Okay.
I'm sorry, on Godinez Vidigaris.
All right. DVR takes a quick look at Firemane Avenger and says, wow, that card's good.
Very varied opinions on that Mulligan decision
Looking to attack.
out there on Twitter.
Italian. So I get a 20.
All right, and everything attacks into the red zone.
So
Looks like the judge is coming in to maybe make sure that the life totals are correct.
I went from 16
Oh.
to 17.
Yeah, you're correct.
I think it's 20 to 16.
that is
Before I
correct.
messed it up.
Mr. Shark's life total is correct. So
Yep.
that's
I'm
fine.
sorry.
Right, go ahead, Bob.
Okay, just a clarification, but
So
more
you
importantly
take
here,
3,
Ben
5,
Stark
7.
has just dealt a ton of damage. He got that
9,
free Lightning Helix from the Battalion trigger on Firemane Avenger. He used it to take out the Millennial Gargoyle, and he plays 2 more creatures plus another extort, and it's another plains off the top for DVR, and Ben Stark
That can always happen.
runs him over. Used up all his mana, cast 2 creatures. You know, one of the things, I was talking to Noah Weil, who used to write Limited Information.
Sure,
and
original author.
Yeah, and one of the things he said, all he wants to do in Limited
This time
is he
I will
wants to get to
start,
the point where he casts 2 spells in 1 turn. He says he feels like once he gets to that point, he's winning. And we saw that from Ben Stark on back-to-back turns.
It also means you've drawn enough land and not too many lands.
That's right, because you've still got the...
Right, you've gotten to that sort of point where you're at 5 mana, and you've drawn spell, and
Yeah.
you're able to go 2-drop, 3-drop
Yeah.
on turn 5 is just phenomenal.
Be honest.
Yeah. Noah and I have a similar style, and I certainly agreed with him on that.
I didn't main deck. I just boarded him in because
You
pretty
feel
good
like you
against
need-
Boros. Yeah,
You need the
so
extra.
good.
Yeah.
I'd rather normally just have a good consistent deck. You know?
Can't wait to try
Yeah.
out the new standard and booster draft strategies straight from the Pro Tour. Log on to Magic Online and take part in a special standard spotlight events, standard 2-person gold queues, and Gatecrash limited tournaments all weekend. For more information, visit mtgonline.com.
2 land to cast everything, 1 land to cast 2 or 3 things.
So, you know, we asked on Twitter about
I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I wasn't gonna
DVR's
ship the
mulligan
enjoyment.
decision.
Obviously, it's a
Ricky
discount.
Sitter says he snap keeps, but he also learned about mulliganing from Luis, meaning Luis Scott Vargas. Other players saying, I mull that all day. You can never cast a spell, and double red on Scorchwalker is a long shot. Can't win without a mountain. With a deck that good, snap mulligan. You might go 3 or 4 turns without drawing that mountain. Any chance of losing is better than winning. Your chance of losing is better than winning. You have to mull that. You have to mull that. Definitely snap mulligan. Mulligan the triple planes. If you draw 1 out of 10 mountains, that's a sick hand. I'd keep. I keep that hand praying for a mountain on draw. Keep it. 1-0 up on the draw. The mulligan is as painless as it can ever be. Your hand's only mediocre if you hit and stone unplayable if you don't. Your average 6 is probably stronger. Mulligan, never keep wishing hands.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting. I mean, you know, what it really comes down to is at what point is he likely to have drawn a mountain? It's probably around turn 3, turn 4, or, you know, his 3rd or 4th draw step that he gets. And how good is a Sunhome Guild Mage on that turn if he hasn't done anything else?
The point someone else makes, Zachary Hauser says, is Heat Snap keeps it because if you draw that mountain, and even if you flood on lands later, well, you have the Sunhome Guild Mages.
And a backup Sunhome Guild Mage in case one gets killed.
So,
you have a lot of
and you have
places
this great sink for that mana.
Yeah, that's a reasonable point.
Oh, I would say just my own sort of informal poll was though most people at home felt like they would mulligan.
They'd mulligan it, yeah.
Good luck, sir.
Melissa DeTora, who took her first loss of the tournament last round, she's back on the winning track. She's up a game on Australia's Isaac Egan.
All right.
One of the back tables. We might get a chance to see her in the feature match area again.
All right, players at our main table here have kept their hands, and it's going to be a mountain to lead things off for DVR. Ben Stark has a swamp. Let's see if there's going to be a turn 2 play. There's a plane, so that's a good start.
And that's the Fire Fist Striker.
Fire Fist Striker, not too bad on its own. And is that a white of Precinct 6 for Ben Stark?
Yes, it is.
All right, so it's just a 1/1. But Ben's going to instantly trade it off. And that trade actually happens as well. That was a pretty aggressive trade there, especially when you have a armored transport in your hand. You kind of want to wait a little bit. Is this a corpse blockade?
Yeah, it is a corpse blockade.
Hey, that's a nice answer to armored
Yeah.
transport. You can actually block.
Yep. And is there a, DVR sends it in, says, maybe you won't block. Maybe you think I have a Blood Rush creature.
Yeah, and you know, that is kind of the standard play with that card because it's not like it's going to block, so send it in.
So we take a look at his hand. We also see he's got a post-combat mugging, and yep, that's what he's going to do.
All right, he wants to get rid of that corpse blockade. And it's a Foundry Street Denizen to follow up. Yeah, see, this is where you want the Fire Fist Striker.
Yeah.
You know, get in
absolutely.
with 3 guys and make sure that one of them can't block.
And then we take a look at what Ben Stark's working with. An Assault Griffin, a Syndicate Enforcer, a Viscopa Confessor, and all the mana he's going to need to operate and extort.
Okay.
In this game.
It looks like Ben has a little bit more of a controlling hand this time. The Enforcer can certainly get in for damage, but he might have to trade it off here. There's a Wojek Halberdiers and a Bomber Corps. Both of these creatures are going to be attacking.
That's a 3. 2 creatures in 1 turn.
That's right.
2
there
spells
it
in
is.
1 turn, exactly what you were just talking about.
And so he offered the trade, but it looks like Ben wants to be patient. He doesn't want to make that trade with the Foundry Street Denizen because it won't always be a 3/1. Viscopa Confessor, he says pay 1 life. It's a gargoyle. That's going to get exiled. And Ben's looking fairly stabilized here, although he is going to be taking, he's going to be under heavy siege here from DVR as DVR draws a mountain and very carefully reads it. You got to throw him off a little somehow.
That's
right?
Reasonable operations, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciates the artwork on that mountain for a second, and now he's going to survey
drew
the
this?
board.
Who drew this?
Look at this guy.
That's a nice piece of artwork, but Ben might say, hey, this is a guy who hasn't played on the Pro Tour before. He's, if he's reading the card, that might actually be a live card. That could be a Scorch Walker. It might be in his head. Although Ben's reads are pretty good, he might be like, well, that's an amateur move, kid.
Yeah, it could be, but I mean, it looks like DVR is forced to just pass the turn back, and Ben could not be happier, especially as he draws Guardian of the Gateless, which is going to be another great defensive card here, and it's going to enable him to eventually mount an offensive. Let's see what his play is here. He's going to play as Orzhov Guildgate, and he's going to run out a Syndicate Enforcer, and he's going to keep priority here, or keep his priority straight. He wants to keep extorting, and he's going to make sure he gets every extort trigger that he can, and in fact, pays for that here.
Hey, have you done a limited resources podcast about sequencing in this set at all?
No, that's a really good idea.
Sequencing in Orzhov,
That's
sequencing
a great
in
idea.
Evolve.
Because that was one of the outstanding questions we had coming into Gatecrash Limited, and I think that we've answered it. You want to extort every single time.
Yeah.
Like, you want to do that over even develop your board, which is exactly what Ben Stark just did there.
So he played the Assault Griffin second, even though it could have gotten in the air for 3 maybe on this turn.
Exactly. And he also could have played Guardian of the Gateless, used his mana, or used up, cast a bigger creature, but he decided to cast a smaller creature and get an extort trigger.
And then you see he drew the 7th land for the
Guardian of the Gateless with both triggers of extort being.
Well, he's missing one trigger, right? I mean, he's actually also got the Viscopa Confessor.
You're right, absolutely.
This game is looking very well in hand here.
It is indeed. I mean, right now we see DVR shaking his head. He's got a wry smile on his face as well, but he knows that he's under tons of pressure as 6 damage comes crashing into the red zone, and Ben plays his second Guardian of the Gateless, does the exact same play as before, and I think we're going to see a scoop here. Indeed,
Yeah, that doesn't feel
DVR
right,
extends the hand, and Ben Stark wins this round.
I definitely trade next with you.
It's part of the game, I guess.
So I think we're going to try to catch up on Melissa
get
DeTora's
started, and then I have,
game
like, a
2,
purple hand.
but that'll probably happen after we...
We'd like to thank Gaming Etc. for being an official card retailer here at Pro Tour Gatecrash. Gaming Etc. is one of the premier destinations on the internet for all things Magic. For more information, visit gamingetc.com.
I think we're also going to get a chance to talk to Ben Stark and hear a little bit about how he 3-0'd this draft pod. And he's...
Like he does.
And about Orzhov, and about maybe ask him about Guardian of the Gateless. How did what happens when you have cards that you maybe don't want to play, like you talked about in his deck.
Yeah, he said it wasn't one of his favorites for the archetype.
But, seemed pretty solid there.
Yeah, I mean, I think he respects the card, just thinks it's maybe perhaps a little overrated.
Let's send it down to Tim.
Yeah, let's send it down to Tim.
And another draft, another 3-0 from Ben Stark. You told me actually before that draft that this was the one deck you were really worried about facing in this draft.
He had the best deck in the pod. It's not even close. His deck was incredible. I didn't see it, but I think he had 3 of the Boros Guildmage, a bunch of muggings, evasion, the good battalion guys. I mean, his deck was way better than mine.
And you'd mentioned when we were talking a little bit about how your draft went that Guardian of the Gateless, perhaps not a card you're normally that excited to be playing, but it looked like it did good work for you there.
Well, any 5-drop is going to impact the board against an aggressive deck. You know, if you can live and then hit your 5 land drops and then play it. You could even see in that game, it didn't do anything particularly impressive. In that game, it was barely better than an Assault Griffin, and an Assault Griffin is not an impressive card. I generally would take Guardian over Assault Griffin, but I mean, it's a mediocre card. It looks like it's a bomb, and it's not. It's a playable. You know, you're going to usually play with it if you're not too heavy on 5s. But Orzhov is about extorting and having cheap cards, and you only want a 5-drop or 2 in your whole deck. And I don't think it's particularly impressive. Didn't there either, to be honest.
Now, we normally think of you as mainly a limited player. How are you feeling about going back into standard now? 5 rounds left to go.
You know, so far I 5-0'd the constructed, but you know, I ran really well. I would definitely be more excited about my chances if there was another 2 booster drafts instead of another 5 rounds of constructed. But I feel like we've got a good deck. I mean, you know, I started to do really well when I started working with the Channel Fireball guys because, you know, with Josh Utter-Layton and, you know, Luis Scott Vargas, they're such good constructed players. And, you know, Josh especially is so good at tweaking decks. I mean, we just always have a good list. Like Esper, clearly nothing special, but, I mean, it's a good list, you know. I mean, we have good sideboard cards, good main deck. Hopefully I can draw well.
So in pretty much the best position you can be in now with 5 rounds to go. We're going to wish you well for now we go back into the constructed rounds. We'll see if we can get a few more games in, back on the camera in the feature match area.
Thanks.
All right, let's take a look at Melissa DeTora versus
Isaac Egan of Australia. Both
Now-
of these players are, well, actually, Melissa is 9-1.
Yes.
Isaac Egan is actually
Okay.
8-2.
And it looks like DeTora is up a game here. We mentioned that earlier. You know, she had won her second match, and let's take a look at the board state here. It
results.
looks like
So just a couple of the other matches going on. This is the last match in the feature match area. Gadenis Vidageris was defeated by Samuel Estrade 2-0, and it sounds like Tom Martell has defeated Makahito Mihara 2-1.
okay.
So let me see. Ooh, this is looking good for the.
For
Orzhov
Melissa,
deck.
yeah, it looks like a Grizzly Spectacle just took down a martial gloried creature there. So she's going to pass the turn back. She's at 17. Isaac's down to 11 now.
And going to 10.
And going to 10 from 1,000 lashes as well, which is on that night. So it does look like Egan, though, has 5 cards in hand, so he should be able to come up with a few plays here to help get him stable. He's facing down a White of Precinct 6 and a Kingpin's Pet.
There you see the Grizzly Spectacle that she cast. And then let's take a look at their hands.
All right, Fire Fist Striker, Skinbrand Goblin, Ember Beast, Foundry Champion. Now that's a big play, but he's only at 4 lands, so he's away from that. And a Shielded Passage.
16-11.
He plays the Skinbrand Goblin.
And he's able to extort triggered ability, not an activated ability.
That's right.
Even
Does
though
pay
it's
for
under
it.
the 1,000 lashes.
I can't quite see how big that White of Precinct 6 is right now. We saw a creature die a minute ago, so we figure it's at least a 2/2, but there's 5 or 6 cards in his yard, so there might be more.
Let's take a look at Melissa DeTora's hand. It's currently a 4/4 in the white.
No effects.
She says no effects, and he says Shielded Passage.
Yeah, the results.
It's going to prevent the damage and keep his guy alive, but that's all it's going to do.
Yeah. No. It's just a 1-for-0
A 1-for-0.
on himself.
Right. So not an ideal use for the card, but he is at least surviving, or not taking damage that turn and setting himself up so that he can keep that blocker around and maybe get a double block on the white later. In fact, I think he has an Ember Beast now in hand as well. He could cast that and pay extort if he wanted.
And then Melissa played a Key Rune and another White of Precinct 6.
Wow. So those things are just big here. And he does in fact play out the Ember Beast and pays the extort costs, and he's got to ship the
You're
turn
at,
back.
10.
He also wants to keep as many creatures on the battlefield as possible for if he ever gets the 6 mana to play that Foundry Champion, as it is going to deal a bunch of damage to something when it enters the battlefield. She
Take 3 and extort.
She pays Shadow Slice, so she did put it in. We were wondering about this when we watched Melissa draft earlier. It's going to go on the Kingpin's Pet, and that's going to be the game and the match to Melissa DeTora.
Right, because she gets 4 off the first
Yeah, I know, like,
first one because of the extort. Then she attacks for 2, gets in for 2 more. That's 6.
That's right.
And then
Yeah.
3 more from the
It's
Shadow
still, like,
Slices
bad, but,
Cipher.
Uh-huh.
You know, casting the spell again.
Right.
That's 9 in one, just out of nowhere.
Yeah. And that is it. She is going to 2-1 this pod, which, you know, we thought that was a pretty... You'd be pretty happy with that outcome after the draft portion.
It was like,
it's just okay.
yeah.
Melissa wins 2-0.
Yes.
And she thought it was more than okay, right? She really
actually,
liked
yeah,
it.
and she proved it too. Welcome back to the booth, Marshall Cyclist, Brian David Marshall, and that's true. You know, I was looking at the White of Precinct 6 that she had. She had 2 of them, and I thought, you know, it's not that great. She doesn't have Balustrade Spy. She's not doing any milling directly, but she was aggressively trading creatures.
Right.
She used her Grizzly Spectacle to, you know, at the right time to try to grow those things. And yeah, they were both 4/4.
And we also saw her just put her white down and trade early.
Yes.
You know, something that we've talked about a lot about this format, like that you need to have some creatures on the early going, even if you're not going to, that's not your plan for attack.
Yes.
Then it needs to be your plan for defense.
You know,
because other people are attacking with very early creatures.
Exactly. I was talking with Zach Hill about this, and he says he just wants to have 6, 7 2-drops in every
I'm on
deck
board.
because he wants to do something in the early stages so you don't just get ran over.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. Interesting to note also from that first draft pod, you can watch this in the draft view. Remember, we covered Melissa and Ben Stark's draft.
Yes.
We had 8 people sitting around the table, recording every pick, entering it. It's available on the draft recorder. You can go look at it now. Melissa DeTora, Orzhov, player Ben Stark,
Yes.
Orzhov.
Yes.
5-1 between the 2 of them.
Yes,
as
that is
Orzhov.
really impressive. And they had a little different approaches. All right, we're told we're going to send it back to the news desk now. So let's get it over to Rich, and we'll see you guys in a little bit.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the news desk. Rich Hagan here with you. Let's bring you some scores on the doors. Now, when Ben Stark played Eric Froelich in the last round, they chatted afterwards. Ben was, a little apologetic at having beaten a teammate and a friend, and he said, look, your deck's really good. Hopefully you just crush someone the next round. That is what happened. Eric Froelich now at 9-2 at the expense of Timothée Simoneau of France. He's at 8-2-1. So again, that one draw from yesterday, keeping him ahead of the 8-3s. Ben Stark, 10-1. You saw there against Owen van Ravenswaaij of the Netherlands. He's now down to 9-2. But coming in, when you saw his draft pod, his first Pro Tour, imagine being down to 9-2 at your first Pro Tour. What a story for him. Another great story brewing. The overnight leader, Melissa DeTora. The guys in the booth called it. That Orzhov deck wasn't a 3-0 deck, could have been a 1-2. It turned out to be a 2-1 deck. So, congratulations to her. She's still pacing the field at 10-1. Isaac Egan now at 8-3, the Australian. And the last result to bring you right now is Robert Jurkovic, the Slovak Republic former team world champion. He's got a draw. He's 8-2-1, but he's defeated Gianluca Spanu of Italy to go to 8-3. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a chat with some of our favourite players here at the desk. We've got some great stuff coming your way over the next hour or so as the players have a little lunch break, prepare themselves for the rigours of 5 more rounds of standard. And I'm delighted to say, as I turn to my left, that I'm joined by a player of the year, no less. It's Owen Turtenwald. Owen, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us and taking the time. Great to see you again. Now, let's take us right back, because we've got a few minutes to chat. Let's go right back to the start of Magic for you. Where is it? When is it? How is it?
The start of Magic for me, I was very young, and there was a card store near my house. I mean, I started with Pokemon, and just all the older kids at the store were like, what are you doing? Just try Magic, and it was just from there. I played casually for a very long time, and then I just made my way to tournament Magic, and first Grand Prix I was just hooked.
So what is it about tournament Magic specifically that you love so much? Because you are one of the fiercest tournament competitors I can remember in a while. You really thrive on that round after round thing. What is it about you that works for that?
Oh, absolutely. It's just, I just love playing in tournaments. It's the competition. It's the reward you get from preparation. It's just you're investing time and energy, and you care about it, and getting the result is just it's just awesome.
Okay. You are looking in tremendous shape, if you don't mind me saying so.
Thank you.
Is there a difference in your play and in your mental approach now than, let's say, 2 years ago?
2 years ago? Sure. I'm certainly much better as a player. From last year, probably no difference.
Okay. You start playing, you go to your first Pro Tour, it's Valencia 2007. Bit of an adventure, that one.
Oh, yeah.
We have floods everywhere. Day one is cancelled.
Yep.
Suddenly it's this day and 3/4 shoehorned into
Yep.
one day. We had 10 rounds on day one. And you come out of that with a ton of credit. Top 32, you finished 18th at that event.
Yeah.
But it must have been a pretty mind-bending experience as a first Pro Tour.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Valencia.
Well, the first Grand Prix I actually performed well in. I actually got second place, and that qualified me for my first Pro Tour. And then coming out of that with the 18th place finish, I was just feeling so good. I'm like, wow, maybe I actually am good at this. And just the Pro Tour was just great. I played the same deck at both tournaments, so there was that on top of it. And yeah, having day one be canceled. We showed up to the convention center, and some of the older pros, like Antonino De Rosa, he's just like, go home, there's no Pro Tour. And we're like, what is this guy doing? Why is he playing a trick on us?
I remember standing outside the door with like hordes of players
just
around
me and some younger kids, and they're like, no, go home, there's no Pro Tour.
Actually go away.
Yeah, and then we went, and there was a representative that's just like, look, there was an awful flood. The site was just flooded with water, and the last chance qualifier the day before, they couldn't finish. The rising waters, not the card, had made everyone go home, and they said instead of completing the tournament, everyone who's left just gets qualified. So there was that, and what they did was they made day one additional rounds.
That's right.
So more people would be mathematically eliminated, so they could catch their flight home. And then they made day two less rounds, and then they just started the top 8 immediately after that.
It was an incredible
really
Pro
interesting.
Tour. It was a very interesting Pro Tour. And as I say, and at that point you're only, 16, 17, I think?
16 or 17, yeah.
And so you get that first taste of Pro Tour. Since when? You've played in 16. And I guess you are best known for being just a machine at the Grand Prix level.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, conversion rates are so tough because the fields, they're getting bigger and bigger. You have 1,000 player, 1,500, 2,000 player. We had 1970 turning up to London, for goodness sake, last week. And yet, you have 12 Grand Prix top 8s.
Yeah.
That must say something, not just about your general skill level, but there must be something about your ability to bear down and simply beat the players who are not as good as you more consistently than a lot of other players do.
Absolutely.
How do you do that? Because that is gold to be able to do that.
Well, I mean, I don't know. It has a lot to do with experience because I've played in so many Grand Prix. I've been playing tournaments for like 3.5, 4 years now, or since Valencia even. I've been trying to take it pretty serious. And it's just like so satisfying to do well in a tournament. Like I was saying, it's just you just care so much. You're just trying, and it's just like when you get paired against somebody who you know isn't as good, you're like, well, I've never heard of this person. They might be as good, but it's unlikely. So you just get paired against somebody. You're like, I should be able to beat this guy. Like if I don't beat this guy, like, what am I doing?
Now, are you one of these players? I was talking with Paolo Vitadama de Rosa, who is very much a roller coaster player.
Yes.
He wins and he makes a big thing out of it to himself, even though he's one of the greatest players ever. It's like, I won, yes, I'm 3-1.
Yep.
Because when he loses, he is super low and he's just like, he's miserable to talk to, he's miserable.
Yep.
Where are you? Are you much more even keel?
No, exact same way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because that's what it is. When you know that you're going to be so disappointed, and not like upset, like I'm not yelling at people, I'm not like berating my opponent. It's just like I'm disappointed in myself. I'm just unhappy that I let that result happen. It's just because when you win, you feel so good, and when you lose, it's just like, ugh, I lost.
Sure. Is there a sense also, when you've done it often enough, you know just how frequently things get in the way?
Yes.
There's the matchup you can't win because you just don't have the right sideboard cards, you read it wrong.
Yeah.
There's the matchup you can't win because you mulligan to 4 and you mulligan to 4.
Yep.
And there's the matchup you can't win because you just get flooded completely.
Yep.
And it's so tough. One of the things I love about day 2s of Pro Tours is you watch people in round 13, and they're at 10-3, which is a great record after 13 rounds.
Yep.
But they're playing elimination magic for the next 3 hours. And when you see people lose in round 14,
it's brutal.
And they know what it costs to get to the place where they might have won 3 in a row, to be in the top 8 and come back tomorrow. And I think that's one of the big things, because when you've done it enough and you know what's at stake, you don't let mistakes get in the way.
No, definitely not.
You make the opportunity count.
Yep.
All right.
Because it takes just an incredible amount of luck to do well in a tournament. Like you were saying, like sometimes you mulligan to 4. Sometimes it's not that obvious. You play a game and it's like, well, I drew my like shock and I lost to a 3/3, but if I had drawn my lightning bolt, I would have been able to kill it. It's just like subtle differences of I drew my rare or he didn't draw. Like it's just a lot of things have to break right, and you have to play well.
All right, let's look at this season. You've already got 7 points finishes, highlighted by third place with the team Grand Prix San Jose. Remind everyone who your team was at that team event.
For that tournament, I played with Eric Froelich and Conley Woods.
So
great team.
I was going to say they're actually quite good at Magic. It turns out, aren't they?
Yeah.
Do you like team events generally?
It was fun. I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Are you going to join us in Utrecht? Are you going to come to Europe?
No, I'm not going to. Providence, I think, is the next one I'm going to play.
Okay, because that's the same weekend, I believe. So I think you get the chance to stay not quite at home, but at least a little bit closer than Utrecht. We don't need any extra players coming to Utrecht. We're going to have thousands from around Europe. We're very, very excited about that team event. You'll be able to watch live coverage of that here on MagicTheGathering.com. So let's bring ourselves a little closer to this weekend. Gatecrash comes out, and obviously you, more than most people, are invested in what's in the set, how's it going to change standard, what's the new limited format going to be like. How do you go about testing? How do you end up testing with who you do?
I tested with the Star City team.
All right.
Sam Black, John Finkel, Gooddennis, Andrew Cuneo, Reed Duke.
Tom Martell's in that group.
Laundry list of great players.
All right.
And we just first couple days we just drafted all day, just draft.
Okay.
And the first 3 or 4 drafts I just got smashed, just brutalized.
Well, now, were you trying the same thing over and over, or did it not matter what you tried?
Well, I had not played in any drafts until I got to the house, and there was a couple people who had played like 12 drafts, so they had a huge leg up. But it's not like your main goal is not to win or lose in those drafts. Although clearly winning does feel good against really good players.
Yeah.
But it's just to try to see. You're trying to learn the cards, and it's going to sound stupid, but knowing what the cards do is a skill.
Of course it is.
Yeah, for sure. And then you're trying to learn what doesn't work. Like I built some decks that just don't quite make sense. Like this format's pretty aggressive, so if you don't have a very focused, logical game plan, if your cards don't make sense together, it's going to be hard to win, especially against good players with good aggressive decks.
You talk about being able to read the card and know what they do. You think of a card like Mugging.
Yes.
Everyone knows it's a sorcery and it deals 2 damage, which means it kills things. Yeah, it does something else as well. And a lot of people don't know that. They don't know it does anything else. They don't know it clears your 6/5 out the way that you can then get in.
One of the people in the house thought it tapped the creature.
There you go.
Yeah, does not do that.
No, and that's why you practice. Okay. You're on a great team now, but previously you were also on a great team. So you, pretty uniquely, are in a position to talk about the parallels and the differences between those 2 powerhouse groups, because I think the world is largely, we would acknowledge, is led by Channel Fireball and SCG. Those 2 groups are the people we all aspire to beat.
Yes,
so
for sure.
Talk a little bit about the parallels and also some of the differences.
The teams are actually not all that different. I mean, you've got certain people on the team that are just grinding games with the best decks in the format, the known decks, and I think that the Star City team is a little bit better at draft, and I think that the Channel Fireball team is probably a little bit better at constructed.
Okay.
But
is that because of any particular people?
Well, I'm not gonna. You're not like this guy's horrible at draft.
No, I don't mean that.
You will beat him if you play in the draft.
I don't mean that. No. But in terms of constructed, because I always think of Sam Black as being a killer name for constructed.
Most people on the team put a huge stock in what he has to say. If he says something about constructed, you better shut up and listen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so, do you think there is a focus more on draft with one team or the other?
No.
Or, no, they're all
if anything,
even?
I think both teams undervalue draft, because I think that a lot of times when you look at people who top 8 the Pro Tour, whose names you haven't quite heard of, 6-0 in draft, and the draft rounds are almost equally as valuable as the constructed, as long as you don't count the fact that the top 8 is constructed.
Wow.
To getting to the top 8, they're kind of the same.
See that?
A lot of times people are like, we should stop drafting. Let's just keep playing constructed and make sure we have a good deck. It's like, no, but I've had tournaments where I did well in constructed and did bad in draft, and it's like, well, why did I do that? I should have just prepared more for draft.
Okay. So you come in, you test with SCG. It's great. Tell us about your standard deck. What are you playing?
Jund. I'm playing Jund.
You always play Jund. I
haven't played Jund in a while, and I've regretted it.
I've been meeting you the night before tournaments, going like, Jund again. Yeah. It's like, but this time I'm playing Jund. You're happy to be playing Jund.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm not often happy with my deck choice. This tournament, I'm pretty happy.
Why?
And I'm going to look like a fool when I don't make top 8 with constructed rounds only left.
But what, tell us why you like your deck so far.
I like my deck because no deck in the format is like a clear best deck. There's nobody who's like, I'm playing this and I'm never losing. I like Jund because anytime you sit down for a match with Jund, you're giving yourself a good chance to just win the match.
All right.
You're not like, well, I have no unwinnable matchups. The games are going to go long. You have play, and you have just good cards.
So you're
Ragtusk is just good.
You're kind of backing yourself to outplay whoever's on the other side and saying, let's not let the Magic cards get too much in the way of me being better than the human being on the other side of the table.
Sure. It's not like there's a whole lot of people in the tournament that I'm going to flat out play. That just doesn't happen very often at the Pro Tour.
Sure.
Sometimes somebody will make 1 or 2 mistakes, but it's just all my cards are good. The deck is consistent. It has answers to basically anything that you're going to come up against, and I'm happy with the mirror match. So I have a solid plan for every deck, and I'm not going to be 80% against any deck I play against, but I'm not going to be 20% either. So
absolutely.
Yep.
So we're not going to see you with Niv Magus Elementals anytime soon.
No.
That's not your idea of a good time. All right, well, listen, we have to let him go. We're on lunch break, remember? So you're not missing any live Magic. We've got another great guest coming in. We're going to do one of those fabulous infographics coming up, and then some fantastic playback for those of you who missed out standard deck text from yesterday, including the perfect record for the tournament leader, Melissa DeTora. So many thanks to Owen Turtenwald, former Player of the Year, and from one absolutely stellar talent, I'm delighted to say that in the hot seat is another terrific player, incredibly popular around the world. It's a great pleasure to welcome to the desk Mr. Gerry Thompson. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great right now.
Aren't you just? I'm having a look, and unless they've put a misprint on the scoreboard, you've only lost once.
You would think that might be a misprint because this is a Pro Tour and it's me, but I don't know.
Okay, so you have played in a lot of Pro Tours.
How many?
I have you down at 32. This is your 33rd.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
That's a bunch, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of, 7 to 8 years of not all of them, essentially.
Yeah.
How much would top 8 mean?
A ton. It's like one of the things that I haven't done in Magic. I've been playing forever. I would like to think that I'm well respected, but this is definitely like the black mark on my resume where I don't have a Pro Tour top 8. So.
It's hardly a black mark, but I mean, it would certainly be an awesome thing to say is there. You have, of course, experience of getting over the finish line. You've got 2 Grand Prix titles.
Yeah, those are easy. These are tough.
See, I love this guy. I talked to Gerry at Gen Con a couple of years ago, and it's something I remember you said to me, and you blew me away completely, because I was going to go and play in a GP. I said, I'm like 1750 on Magic Online or something, and you went, yeah, that's good enough to top 8 a GP. You can do that.
Yeah.
And I went away and didn't make top 8, but I cashed, and I was like, yeah, that was partly thanks to you. And you are very good at making other people good at Magic. That's one of the things that
I try, I want Magic to surround me with people that I like to be around. I want everyone to be positive and be having a good time and stuff. And it's not just about me, It's like I want to see my friends win. And there's a very nice picture from Pro Tour Everson Restored where Josh Cho made top 8, and I was way more happier that he made top 8 than me, that means more to me.
You see, now I've noticed that about you. You are very much a team player, and that in some ways you almost shun the limelight.
I don't know about that. I get plenty of limelight.
Well, you do, it's true. And let's talk a little bit about that, because in the last sort of 12, 18 months, you become extremely visible. You're wearing a StarCityGames.com shirt. And, tell us about what's going on there, because it looks to me like you're surrounded by some great players. You've got tons of great ideas. And it looks like, most important of all, around Magic, you're having a ton of fun.
Yeah, I am, definitely. I love my job. I recently relocated to Roanoke, Virginia, which is, kind of a small town or whatever, but I enjoy it. I like it. But the most thing that I enjoy is just my job, like working at Star City, filming like videos every week, and I'm still doing like my article every week and everything, but I get to hang out with like Brad Nelson. We tricked him into moving there too. Todd Anderson, Alian Trazi, Brian Braun, like all these great people.
Drafts could be kind of okay there.
Drafts are excellent, yeah. For this tournament, we didn't prepare like with the Roanoke people. No. I prepared with Channel Fireball,
That's
but
right.
The Pro Tours before that were great. There's never a shortage of people. We can always fire off like 3 drafts a night if we want, so.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Talking of outstanding, we've just had Owen on the show, who Channel Fireball for the last couple of years, very closely associated with, testing for this event with Star City. You absolutely, Mr. Star City, testing for this event with Channel Fireball.
I mean, we write for different websites, but we're all friends.
Absolutely.
So it's just like whatever's convenient, whatever works.
So how has that been? Because I think one of the holy of holies for people at home is like, if you could get on to a Channel Fireball team.
Yeah, I mean,
what is it like? Is it good?
they're the best team. They're all very, very good players. They all have like their certain specialties. Like Ben Stark, really good at limited, teaches basically everyone how to draft. Josh Utter-Layton is the one that is insane at deck selection, always or almost always picks the right deck for the right tournament. And now I'm in there like trying to tune the last few cards in the deck to make it perfect. So I think the team has obviously helped me. I mean, I don't know if it's just that or whatever, or if I'm finally having the right combination of like playing good and being lucky enough or whatever, but it's definitely helped.
Okay, well, 10-1, fantastic record. So final question for you. Tell us a little bit about your deck and how positioned you are as we head back into Constructed after this lunch break.
So I'm playing Blue Eye Red Flash, and it's a deck that I played for about 2 months when no one else really wanted to play it. Yeah. And I didn't really want to play the deck at first, but then all the Channel Fireball guys were like, hey, this is awesome. We have a Harvest Pyre in the deck, which is just like super clean kill with Boros Reckoner, which is something I really love out of a deck. And I was just like, no, I don't want to play it. It'd be boring, I've already done this. I want to play something else. And then they jumped off the deck onto Esper as I was jumping on the deck. So then I ended up playing this, and they ended up all playing Esper pretty much. But I really like the deck. I know it really well. I'm playing good. I 5-0'd yesterday, so hopefully I can go 2-2, make top 8.
I was going to say 2-2 from here would see you sitting down with an opponent in the last round with hopefully the chance to not play Magic for a little while.
That would be great.
Well, we would love to see you on Sunday. We love seeing you on any Sunday, but a Pro Tour Sunday, it would be great to have him here. One of our finest players and a great ambassador for the game, Gerry Thompson, everybody. Thanks, Gerry. Thanks for coming in. I can tell you that Zach Hill and Brian David Marshall are just moments away because we've got another great feature for you here as we head into the lunch break. So what's happening now? The players are gearing up for Standard again. They're getting ready to come on in and come back for 5 more rounds of Standard. I'm going to show you the leaderboard as we had it coming in overnight. Let's take a quick look at our scoreboard if we can. You had Melissa DeTora, remember, overnight. She was 8-0 leading the way, and she is still leading the way. This is not, of course, the complete scoreboard. This is those 2 draft pods from this morning. And of course, you can see what 3 draft rounds, when you can't escape the rest of your team on the pod, can do. You see Matteo Orsini-Jones there was 6-2 overnight in a group of 7-1s. He lost all his rounds, 6-5, and so he comes out of that from the same table as Gerry Thompson, is 4 rounds ahead now of that, looking towards hopefully a Pro Tour top 8, a first Pro Tour top 8 for Gerry Thompson. So that's the scoreboard. I'm delighted to welcome onto the desk Zach Hill, Brian David Marshall, and GatheringMagic.com. They've been doing this fantastic thing, these infographics from That Guy James. By day, graphic illustrator, a novelist, and just a fabulous artist. By night, Magic fan extraordinaire. We're going to take a look at his take on Gatecrash. Here we go. Ta-da! Numbers. It's the second act. Zach, you going to tell us anything about Dragon's Maze?
It depends.
You're not, are you?
I don't think I am.
I didn't think you were either. Let's move on. Meet the contestants. Now, let me see. I know that, Brian, you're Simic.
Yes, I am.
And I am obviously Boros of those 5, though I'm really Azorius by inclination. Zach, you are wearing a...
I am wearing a Rakdos shirt.
Yeah, so...
I don't like all of that order nonsense, all of that planning. That's all good and nice. I like to party, man.
Are you sure you're not Demir, really, and you're just throwing us off the scent?
If I was Demir, I certainly wouldn't tell you.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, you stay up all night at some party and then go in and kill people in the morning without any sleep.
All right, let's see what's
next. I really
next.
do Pro Tour broadcast without sleep.
Now, Zach, I do want to ask you about this. You look at that 126 creatures, you see the sort of breakout of the set. I guess those numbers vary quite a lot from set to set, and in doing so, it really sort of gives you the behind the scenes, what's really going on in a set.
I think that's true to an extent. I mean, the numbers don't vary that widely,
right.
Largely because limited is such a high priority for R&D. In order for limited to work, you have to have a decent amount of creatures. If you've ever drafted Revised or Legends or something, the creature counts are all off and you just literally cannot draft them. There's 3 creatures at common that can attack, period. So you won't see a huge variance there, but unless you're doing something like Mirrodin where there's going to be a lot of artifacts, but the slight differences in numbers certainly can give you an inkling of the feel or the attitude or the tone of the set.
So I guess you can tweak BDM things like maybe the number of artifacts in a set. So you can start sort of going, yeah, we want to make Naturalize more of a main deck card, something like that.
You know, I was thinking more about the commons and uncommons numbers on that slide.
Right.
Because we did a sideline interview with Melissa DeTora talking about her draft deck and, you know, had her preference for Orzhov. And she had, you know, we talked about her first draft deck, which had rares in it. And this deck, she's like, well, it doesn't have rares, but I am more Orzhov, right? I'm more focused on Orzhov.
Totally.
And I have the good commons and uncommons of Orzhov. I don't need rares. Right, and I thought that was a great message.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was really interesting. And you see how much of the set is commons and uncommons, right? I think I said 100 commons, you know, 50 uncommons, something like that. About, you know, and you know those are the cards you're playing with. That's your sandbox when you're drafting.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's something we really saw in play here.
Well, if you are a flavor drafter, maybe you like to follow along to a particular artist. So your best chance for that, let's take a look at our next slide. This is Zoltan Boros. What a good name. He has 11 cards, and I love the fact that one artist will do a whole cycle. So he gets all the charms. So you get that feel that, yes, they are all part of the same stable. And I guess plenty of good, powerful spells there, particularly for limited. Interested to see how Hold the Gates did. That was this kind of sleeper yesterday. People were talking about actually that turning out to be pretty good in limited BDM.
I saw it be pretty interesting on a number of boards, even where it was just giving creatures vigilance, and they didn't have, you know, it's like, oh look, I hit my battalion and I can still block and do things and play tricks. Sure. So it was really interesting. The card there, art-wise, that I love is Grizzly Spectacle, just that giant hand blocking your view of the Grizzly Spectacle. I love that card. I love that piece of artwork.
It's super flavorful for sure. All right, what's next? Let's take a look. As we see that cards that are interact with or are named with gate. So of course you've got 5 guild gates. Do you know, the one of those that I always forget has anything to do with gates is that last one, Way of the Thief. I'm like, yeah, isn't that, you know, sort of slightly not very exciting +2/+2 enchantment thing? And then I remember the gate clause on that, and that's...
I feel like that's a card that I'm going to just gnash my teeth as I lose to in like 2 or 3 straight drafts on Magic Online. It's one of those cards that's going to sneak up on the format, I think, and you're going to see people playing it more and more.
Well, especially if you get into any sort of stall or anything like that. It's really good in Simic because you have a lot of size. You need a card to sort of help you break through. Still not going to be a super high pick, but you put that on a Shamble Shark that's already a 4/3, that card's going to end the game real fast.
I mentioned Naturalize a moment ago. Let's take a look at our next sheet, and this is the reprints, the cards that are coming back because they're kind of, either they have a flavorful fitting in, or they have a mechanic that fits in, or once you've invented Naturalize, why reinvent Naturalize? How about using Naturalize like they did in 8, 9, 10, M10, 11, 12, 13, and many other sets besides. BDM, what stands out for you on the reprint side in Gatecrash?
Prophetic Prism.
Why?
Just you watch people save their draft. It's like this. It's this life preserver that people get thrown. You know, you have like a really good Boros card that you pick first pick, right? You know, like you do. You're like, I want to be Boros. It's awesome. And you pick it, and you pick maybe another Boros card, and then, Boros isn't here, and you take a couple white cards. You take you're like, oh look, this. All right, Orzhov I guess is open. You take some Orzhov cards. But you still want to play that. You still want to play that Aurelia's Fury, right? You know, you still want, and Prophetic Prism is this great way to like sort of dig through your deck and also have access to these sort of, we've seen it time and time again. I would say like 3 or 4 of the decks we saw in the feature match area over these last 3 rounds were 3-color versions of decks where people were fighting over guilds and then they had a splash red for Blood Rush in Simic, or had a splash blue in their Orzhov decks. We saw a Orzhov deck splashing blue versus an Orzhov deck splashing blue. And you know, Prophetic Prism in that scenario is fantastic. Finds you your cards, gives you a spell that is, you know, triggering your extort triggers, and fixes your mana to get you to maybe your Cypher card or your, you know. So I love the Prophetic Prism.
So let's look at the marked cards in Gatecrash, the ones that are guild affiliated. If we take a look at those, pretty much all the way across the board, except poor old Gruul only gets 28 of them, 58% marked, 42 unmarked. Let's move on. As we see, how does that compare with Return to Ravnica? You see the 5 Ravnica guilds. Go Azorius, 50-50 pretty much. And that 274, that reflects the basic lands that were in Return to Ravnica, not this time around. Let's carry on. And the best of the rest, well, again, very pretty all the way across 28. Let's keep going. Now this, I would like to see with comparisons, because this is an amazingly interesting graph. The number of drops at each converted mana cost. You see how many are there, and then you start thinking, okay, sure, there are 28 one casting cost spells, but how many of those are creatures? And then how many of those are creatures I want to play? And then how many of them are in my guild? And then how many of them are common? And you start going, yeah, it turns out there's 2 1-drops that I'm interested in. And so that curve varies for almost every player in every draft. And Brian, I think one of the big secrets to draft is players who understand where their curve is going and where their curve is coming from, where they're going to find these cards.
This is something Zach and I have been talking about a lot this weekend when we've been talking about draft, right? You advocate, what, 6, 8 2-drops?
Oh, yeah.
In your deck? Even if your 2-drops are not there to attack,
right?
Sometimes your 2-drops are just there to bridge you to your 5-drops.
Exactly.
Right? Like you have a slower deck, or you have an extort deck, but I really need 2-drops here to trade with this Gruul deck, to trade with this Boros deck.
Right, and one of the things about having 5 guild mages is sometimes your 2-drops actually are fine in the mid to late game. Right. Something like a Frilled Eiling, okay, that becomes a real threat later. So there's a lot of ways to turn your 2-drops. They're not necessarily just grizzly bears. They can do stuff at every stage of the game.
Well, maybe the reason you play 2-drops is you want to go to some higher mana cost spells, like this next one, for example, which costs quite a lot. Costs 12. Okay, we're kind of fooling with you there. I don't think anyone's ever casting that of 12 lands in a limited game.
No, but they'll play it on turn 3, I think, a lot, in standard, maybe even in legacy.
For sure.
Right? You're gonna unexpected results into it, right. Or unexpected results into omniscience, and then omniscience into the infinite.
I looked down for a moment, I looked back up, and Aliantrazi was in the book. Wow, how did that happen? All right, let's move on to our next slide. And we'll see what's coming your way next. And it is the skilled citizens. God, they're a skillful bunch, really, the citizens of Ravnica. There you are. Some of them are defenders, got 5 double strikers, lots of flyers, 12 haste, 8 vigilance, 12 trample. I think that's my favorite keyword in Magic.
Trample.
I love trample. Oh, never mind, yes, you've made some creatures I don't care in any way. BDM, what about you, of those, favorite?
I love defender. No, I'm kidding.
I'm going to say.
I like haste and I like flying.
Yep. So. Seems fair. Let's take a look at some creature types now. We're into pie chart territory now. Here we go. 34 human, you got 63 the rest of the way. 1 jellyfish. You got to feel like you're a little friend. I wonder who does the jellyfish hang out with there? Is it the beast, or do the elves take pity on the jellyfish, or how does it work?
I like the idea of the jellyfish hanging out with the angels. It just flies around. They've got a little buddy. It sort of sits on their shoulder.
It's a very optimistic view of the world, Zach. I like that.
That is nice.
I like that.
Okay, let's move on. Next up, let's see what's coming our way as we're closing in on the end of this. It's a living. This is what you could do on Ravnica. They never seem to have musician. The card musician was there, like right at the beginning of Magic. They don't keep printing musicians. They're kind of out of fashion.
We don't know what the themes are for upcoming sets.
I was going to say, I can't talk about any of this.
True. That's very fair.
We actually got a Rich Hagen theme.
The orchestra block.
Okay, let's move on, and I'm going to take you a couple of slides further on. Power 2.7, toughness 2.84, but move on again because this gets really interesting fast. Have a look. Power for Simic 1.53, power for Boros 2.7, with an average casting cost almost identical. And what that shows you, that more than 1 whole power difference between Simic and Boros, is that Simic needs more than that 1 counter to kind of bring those cards up to the level of the Boros cards and the Gruul cards. And that is a really interesting stat. That one blew me away the first time I saw it. And Zach, that's all intentional, right?
Well, I mean, it's one of the things about how you compute that statistic is that it doesn't take into account +1/+1 counters. And the whole Simic mechanic is +1/+1 counters. So when that's how you get your size, you're probably going to have a much lower overall average when you're just looking at the cards in the file.
So let's look at some small and some big. Here comes Cloudfin Raptor and Simic Manipulator. They're really, really tiny. But what else is there? Who doesn't need more push-ups? Let's take a look. Yes. It's the Skarga Goliath. Yes. Costs quite a lot as well, though. Let's move on. And the leaders of the pack, there you see the 5. Brian David Marshall, I'll give you a draft and I'll let you open one of them and take one of them. Which do you choose? Why?
I'm going to choose Don't tell her, but I'm going to choose Obsidian.
I was going to say you're going to renege on Prime Speaker Zagara, aren't you?
I am. Obsidian is just so unbelievably freaking unfair.
She's very, very good. Zach, for you?
I think I'm probably going to take Aurelia, the War Leader. I like being in Boros, and you just cast it, your opponent dies. That's kind of true of Obsidat, but with Aurelia, no, they're actually just dead right then, a huge percentage of the time.
Okay, well, we're almost through to our playback time. Let's take another quick look at the last few slides of this. Domri Raid there and Gideon, Champion of Justice. You see the two Planeswalkers. Let's move by. It came from the deep. Again, you see all these crazy, crazy creature types. Keep going. Let's move it on. And the winner is... Okay, I don't understand the Orzhov Signet. Show me the next slide. Why? Okay, we believe you.
understand.
So
that makes total sense.
It does. Many thanks to that guy, James, and the good folks at GatheringMagic.com, Adam Styborski, Richard Castle, all the guys over there. What a talent. You know, I mean, I said to you yesterday, BDM, I don't know much about art, but I do know when I see something pretty awesome, and that was pretty awesome. All right, let me tell you what's happening. The players starting to win their way back from lunch. After round 12, sitting in this seat will be Ellen Bergeau from Wizards of the Coast. She has an announcement you will not want to miss, I promise you. Meanwhile, what we're going to do is we're going to show you 3 standard videos from yesterday. You'll see Conley Woods, you'll see David Schaffman, and you'll see the perfect record of Melissa DeTora in their own words, and then we will be back down the stretch, the 5 best rounds in Magic. It's down the stretch to the top 8. We'll see you very soon. It's time for some standard deck techs.